And what I learned is that there's only 3 times that people change. The first is when they hurt enough that they have to.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That can go lots of different directions. I'll talk more about that in a second. The second one is when they learn enough that they want to.
Hmm.
And the third is they receive enough that they're able to.
Hey, welcome back to another Born to Be interview. Once again, the Zoom sessions, and we are here with the one and only. I don't know if that's true. I've not searched, for the name, but we're here with Amy Barg. And Amy, you are a trainer, a coach, a speaker, and your story is phenomenal of the way that God has directed you to truly become who you were born to be. And I'm so excited to just jump in and get your story out there for all the viewers and all the listeners, because yours is a very, what I love is it's an everyday story of someone who you just thought, you know what, this is probably what my life's going to be. And then, it, quick got flipped, turned upside down. And the journey after that has taken you to really step into some awesome adventures and to become who God's created you to be. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. It's fun to get to have this time with you.
Absolutely. So we're just going to go, I want to go kind of back to those beginning thoughts, because you are a speaker now, you're a trainer, you're a coach. You've got a book that we're going to talk about that I want people to get on and get and be able to get their hands on. But if we go back to early days, Amy, those weren't your expectations or dreams as a kid, were they?
No, they weren't. I really thought that I would live in Missouri my entire life, be married, teaching school, raising my 3 kids. And what ended up happening was I went through a really difficult divorce about 20 years ago that completely changed everything. And it forced me really to make some major changes in my life that I'm sure I would not have done otherwise. At the time, I didn't welcome it, and I certainly wouldn't have wished it on anybody, but I can look back now and see that because of that, it really has, that was the catalyst for me becoming, who I am and what I'm doing today.
Amy, if you don't mind me asking, how long were you married before that divorce took place?
I was married for 20 years. So
20
really
years.
half of my life. Yeah.
So you're saying that through childhood, you thought maybe I'm a teacher, Missouri's my home, I'll get married, I have the family. And for the majority of your life, that was intact.
Yes, that was it.
Then in a moment, this dream that I've had since childhood that I was literally living, it's gone.
Yep. Yeah, it really was. I've described it as if you had a deck of cards and you threw them all up in the air and they all scattered, and now you're trying to put them back together into some semblance of order. That's what my life felt like at that point.
Amy, I know you're not the first person or last person that's going to go through something like that. And one thing that we talk about here on the podcast often is, I don't know that I've ever talked to anybody over the age of maybe 15 who hasn't experienced some kind of death of a dream. They had some dream, whether it was a childhood dream, whether it was something that was birthed in them through college, but they chased it, they pursued it. It became so much of their identity. And then either by decisions of their own or decisions by someone else, the dream dies. And, I think it's at that point we have a choice of dying with that dream and just existing, right? Or coming to a place where what I always talk about is what I love about a relationship with Jesus is the fact that he's really good at death and resurrection, right? It's kind of his specialty.
Yes.
And so it's amazing to come to a place where you begin to trust him to resurrect a new dream in your life. And that's what, as we've talked before and gone through some of your story, that's really the process you've taken. And so I guess take us through some of the stories of that season, and then just the resurrection of the dream that you're living right now.
Yeah. So it was interesting because I remember having a very exact moment where I was so angry at God
Hmm.
I remember it's like saying out loud, like, I am done with you. This is
Yeah.
over. Like, I can't believe you let this happen to me. And that lasted about a day. And then I realized, okay, wait a minute. I've believed in God my whole life. I have
Hmm.
seen him show up and take care of me. Why would I think that that's going to change now just because my circumstances have changed? So I decided, okay, sorry, God, I'd rather have you with me than not with me.
Yeah.
So that it was funny because it really did only last about a day.
Do you feel
Um,
like, Amy, do you feel like it was important to be that honest in that moment with God?
oh yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things. I think that probably allowed me the freedom that since then I've had many moments like that where not that I wanted to completely turn away, but where I have really like
Hmm.
wrestled. And I remember one day laying in the floor, like pounding my fist against the floor going, why is this happening?
Hmm.
And then, I went on and something else happened and I kept moving. But I think it's necessary to have those real ugly moments.
Yeah. So you got to one of those, you got really honest, and then 24 hours later, you were like, you know what? No, we'll keep going.
Yeah. Glad
So,
I made that decision.
and then how did God begin to show up and I guess honor your honesty from that?
Yeah. So one of the big things that happened, I ended up leaving my career as an educator. Honestly, I couldn't afford to stay as a teacher. I had to do something else. And even in the way he brought me to different jobs, it was amazing how that all happened. It's like lots of stories. But at one point, I was working in downtown Chicago, and I really felt like it was time to do something else. It was time
Hmm.
to leave Chicago because it was expensive to live there. My kids were grown and gone at that point. I'm like, why am I staying here? And so I quit my job. I put my house on the market. And I remember so vividly, I had to let a realtor in one day for a showing. They didn't have a key or something. And as this couple stepped across the threshold, this thought came to me, these people are going to buy your house. And it
Hmm.
was so bizarre and like out of the blue that I didn't even tell anybody because I thought nobody's going to believe this. They're going to think
Right.
I'm crazy. But less than a week later, that couple gave me a full price offer on my home.
Wow.
So I really felt like that was God saying, yes, go ahead and
Hmm.
move. But I had a lot of fear around that move because I was leaving everything I had known. I moved to here to Indiana, moved in with my sister and her family, didn't have a job or a place to live. And I started looking for both. And I found this area that had beautiful brand new townhomes being constructed with woods and a creek. And I remember saying this out loud, I want to be in that spot, that corner lot overlooking that woods and that creek. And they told me, oh, that's been sold, So I was like, okay. But I continued to drive through that neighborhood as I
Hmm.
kept looking for a job. And I'll never forget it. It was the day before my birthday. They called me and said, get over here. The woman who had bought that unit that was under construction had to back out. Do you want it? And I walked in. Not only was it the unit that I wanted, it was the exact floor plan that I wanted.
Wow.
And I remember my best friend saying to me, Amy, you trusted God during all those difficult times in your divorce. Maybe you need to trust him for something good in your life because
Oh.
I didn't have a job. Like, how do you buy something without a job? So I said, okay. And I bought it thinking, okay, surely in 2 months, by the time we close, I'll have a job because I had a lot of interviews. Well, we get up right up to closing, no job. So I'm like, oh, God, why? This isn't right. I'm supposed to
Hmm.
get the job and then, the house, and I'm trying to do it the right way. So I was able to use the money from the house that I had sold in Chicago. And then I had to sell a bunch of this stock that I had gotten as part of my divorce settlement. That was in May of 2008. So I buy this
Uh-oh.
townhome outright, thinking, not my plan. Well,
Right.
that fall is when the whole stock market crashed and everything
Yeah.
happened. My financial advisor called me and he goes, hey, remember that stock that you sold in the spring so that you could buy your home? I'm like, yeah. He said, yeah, it was $42 a share when you sold it. Guess what it is right now? I had no idea. Less than $4 a share.
Wow.
And I remember in that moment thinking, okay, I couldn't see the reason
Hmm.
why. And yet clearly there's something bigger than me that is, watching over me and orchestrating that. I told my friends I wanted to take out a full page ad in the Indy Star and say, God is alive and at work,
Yeah.
because I just felt like he was just blessing me so
Wow.
much through that. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Amy, and one of the things I love what you just said is that idea of trusting God for something good. And I think so often for so many of us, it's like, when things fall apart, that's when we really trust God, because we can lean into his everlasting arms. You got all the scriptures about depending on him.
Yep.
But I think it's a totally different kind of trust that we don't, I think we struggle to maybe believe that he's that good, like he's dependable, but is
Yep.
you really for me in the future? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes, I do. And that was why when my friend said that to me, it was a pivotal moment, because she was right. I had, through all the, I had hung in there, but this was something that was so my heart's desire, to have this
Mm,
beautiful home. And I mean, this sounds like a small detail, but I knew I wanted my parents and my kids to be able to come there. I wanted them to have their own bedroom with their own bathroom. So I wanted the 2 master suites. No other townhomes in that row had the 2 master suites
wow.
except the one that I wanted. And that's the
Yeah.
one I got. I mean, that level of detail, just
Yeah.
of goodness, blew my
Yes.
mind.
Amy, let's go back. You talked about the pivotal decision. You're downtown Chicago, you're working, and basically risking everything that you had.
Yeah.
Major change. And I know that you shared with me earlier that there are 3 things that you've discovered that actually need to be present for people to be able to actually change. And so that's a huge change. And it would have been so simple and probably maybe more rational for you to say, listen, I'm going to stay here. I know some people. I'll grit it out. I'll try to do it on my own. But you didn't, and a lot of that was you trusting in God. But you've made a lot of change in your life, and we're going to get into that about what you're doing with. You've gotten connected with the John Maxwell organization. You're a coach. You're a trainer. You're speaking. You've written a book. But unpack for us some of those key things you've discovered that are present to actually be able to allow you to make some of those changes.
Yeah, and this was a big aha for me. And this really came after I got connected with the John Maxwell team, because I really started learning and growing. And what I learned is that there's only 3 times that people change. The first is when they hurt enough that they have to.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That can go lots of different directions. I'll talk more about that in a second. The second one is when they learn enough that they want to.
Hmm.
And the third is they receive enough that they're able to. And so when I started looking at my own life, I realized,
Hmm.
yeah, the hurt of my divorce was so deep that it really did force me to make those big changes, selling my house, quitting my job, moving away from everything. I would never have done that if I'd stayed married. I know I wouldn't. But then the learning enough, because I left education, which that in itself was a huge, like, stepping out of my comfort zone. I mean, when you're a teacher, you're usually, you can do that for life if you want.
Yeah.
But I've learned through all of the different jobs that I've had since then, 6 different jobs I've had, that there was something in me that really wanted to have my own business.
Hmm.
And so that was a process of growth. And then the receiving enough has been that, because um, I really believe, again, God led me to the John Maxwell team.
Mhm.
Um, Through that, like, this is now, I'm in on my 6th year of this. I
Wow.
have received so much from my mentors, from John Maxwell himself, from the community of folks that are in that team, that has led me to this place where, you know what? I really embrace change in a way that I know I didn't before. And I'm not sure that I would have if I hadn't gone through all the stuff that I've gone through.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Amy, I see so many people that get stuck between hurt and learn, and they just want to stay in hurt, and a lot of times their pain becomes their identity.
Yeah.
It becomes their identity. It becomes their excuse. It becomes, in some weird way, kind of their comfort, even though it's
Yep.
pain. Um, do you have any? Can you speak to that at all? How do you not get stuck in the hurt and allow the learning to pull you through that?
Yeah. Well, um, definitely a process.
Yeah.
I know for me, part of the reason that, I mean, definitely my faith in God, but I was raised by two parents who had the most amazing positive mindset, probably of anybody that I've ever known.
Hmm.
And that was modeled to me all throughout my life. So it's like, yeah, there could be a hard thing, but you, you pick up and you keep moving. Um, and the other part of it is I realized that I could look at people's lives who had remained bitter, and I didn't want that.
Hmm.
There's a quote, and I won't be able to say it perfectly, but it's kind of like, if you allow the bitterness to take hold of you, it's kind of like you put yourself in a coffin and put the lid on it, and then you're not living anymore anyway. Um, and another image that I've used for myself in this is, if you pick up a water bottle, which is not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. I mean, it can be either one, but you just hold it. There comes a point when it's so painful to keep holding that you can't do anything else, because like now you got to use both hands. And so I didn't want that to be the way I lived. And it's like, there has to be a point where I say, enough. That, yes, it hurt. Yes, it was awful. I absolutely acknowledge pain. And what can I learn through this? And how can I step and take whatever the next right step is? And so, believe me, I did not do it all on my own. I had a lot of people who came around me and supported me,
Yeah.
but I know that was in me from my parents.
I love that, Amy. And I think it does come down. I think about the scripture where it talks about, where the seed of bitterness and discontent, how it can take root in our soul. And once it takes root, it can ruin the whole field, or whatever the scripture says. But I think that's so key, and such a huge principle there that you've brought out. And I love those things um, when you realize that so much of the truth that we find in the scriptures, they're not just, throwaway, cliche bumper sticker, right?
Right.
And sometimes you feel that way until you live it, and then you realize, oh, like Jesus wasn't just saying stuff about forgiveness. You know what I mean? It
Right.
wasn't just a novel idea. It's literally like, no, if you don't forgive, if you don't move away from bitterness, like, you can't change that you've been through the pain, but you can forfeit all of the joy of your future if you can't
Yeah.
actually begin to learn, if you can't begin to actually receive, the positive, let go of that bitterness and move on. You've done it. You said it wasn't easy. It's not easy. It's not a magic trick, right? It's a
No.
process. It takes a lot of people. It takes continual decisions in the right direction. You did that, and it led you to what you're doing now with coaching, training, speaking. Uh, get us into that story of, I grew up loving John Maxwell. I grew up in Arizona,
Uh-huh.
and in his early years, he was a pastor of a church called
Right.
Skyline out
Yep.
in San Diego. And as a kid, we would go every year to like the district conference of the church denomination we were a part of, and it was always hosted at Skyline. And obviously, John was,
Oh.
the stud of the century out there. And I remember I had just received, a call of my call into ministry when I was 16, and we went over there that year. And I remember my dad pulled John aside and between one of the sessions, and asked him if he would lay hands on me and just pray for me as a prayer blessing. And it was a pivotal moment for me. And I've loved John's stuff. I listen to him all the time, and have gone to conferences where he's been for years. And when I knew that you were connected with him, I was excited to hear a little bit about that in that process. So take us into, you get over it, you move past the bitterness. We've got the townhouse. We're recreating a life. Now all of a sudden, this Missouri school teacher is a coach, a trainer, a speaker, right? Get us there.
Yeah, so that was a crazy thing too. And like, a little sidebar, in the midst of all that, I did meet the man that I am now married to, who is like such a gift to me. That's another
Hmm.
whole story about how God brought him into my life. And I
Wow.
will just say this about that. I met Sam 2 months or 4 months before my mom died. He met my mom once, 2 weeks
Hmm.
before she died. And then we got engaged that fall. And then 8 weeks before our wedding, my dad died. So God brought Sam to me at this, like the exact moment that I so desperately needed that. So we get married and I'm working, and I actually had a good friend of mine come over. It was Christmas time. I remember this again. It's that whoosh of thought. It's like, I just feel like there are times when God puts thoughts in my head that I know he put them there because I didn't think them. And she said, hey, I've joined the John Maxwell team. Would you have any interest in that? And the whoosh said, yes, do it. So I did. And this was like December 29th, I joined. I was going for training in February. And I said to Sam the first week of January, I just gone back to work. I said, gosh, there's so much stuff to learn in this, this online university. And I wish I had more time to really dig into it before I go for this training. And 2 days later, my position was eliminated. And I was like, okay, wait. I was going to do this on the side and then build up the business. And I felt like God was saying, go do it now. So I jumped. I had no clue how to start a business. I'd never done, I'd done other things, but I'd not done that. So that's been my journey the last, almost 5.5 years now. And through that process, I've done.
How long after your parents died did this opportunity come to you?
So Daddy died in 2013, and this would have been January of 2015.
So 2 years.
Yeah.
Like I know that's huge though, right? I mean, like to lose both parents in a short amount of time, to then say, okay, and I'm going to try to trust and love again.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to get married now. And then I know it's your story and you know how it how it has ended. So it's like, and then this, but I want to let our, viewers and our listeners just let this sink in for a minute, that this could have been fold up the shop. We're done again.
Yeah.
It could have been, God, the divorce was one thing, but taking both my parents and this and the, and I'm sure there are moments where you were in a boxing match with God again and Matt again, but that is, for one, just to affirm you of your tenacity and your perseverance to continue to press through in times like that. But that's enormous. And I'm guessing we could probably talk for another 3 hours of little ways during those seasons that God was showing up and saying, hey, I'm still here. I got you through the last one. I'm going to get you through this one. But that's a lot, Amy.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Thank you for saying that. It's really interesting when it is your story and you've lived it. You can say, oh, and then this happened and this happened. But when I really stop and think about that, there were some tough times. And I mean, that's only a part of the story. Like there's so many other pieces of things that happened during that time that I look back now and I'm like, really? So if you will allow me, I'll tell you one other thing this is like a blow your mind God story. So my mom and dad had this amazing home, their dream home. They had built beautiful garden. Like we're talking huge garden with waterfall and ponds and all this kind of stuff. And when they passed, my son and his wife wanted to buy the house, but they couldn't afford it. So we had to sell the house. Really hard. My sisters and I are cleaning out this home that we've loved for years. And a year ago, October, my son called me and he goes, are you sitting down? And I said, yeah, why? And he goes, we just bought Nan and Granddad's house. I was like, what? So 6 years later, he said, I was on the computer and it just popped up that the house was for sale. They went and looked at it, put an offer. It was accepted. They didn't even have their house on the market yet. So they called their realtor and said, can you put this on the market?
Yeah.
Put it on the market before they even had they were supposed to have like the pictures, and all that before you list it. The realtor calls and says, I've got somebody that wants to see it. They came through the house, gave them a cash offer. And within less than a week, their house sold. They bought my mom and dad's. And then a month or two later, they moved into my mom and dad's house. So my grandkids are growing up in the house that
Wow,
my mom and
Amy.
dad built. And my son and I are now working to restore that garden. So it's like, that is God at
Yeah.
work.
Well, I keep coming back to your three words of hurt, learn, and receive.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be just the constant plot in some ways of your life. And honestly, I don't think it's not yours. I think it's the blueprint in some ways for everybody, is that like life is painful. You're not getting away from it, right?
Yeah.
You're going to experience hurt, but in every step of the way for you, you've leaned into what God, who he is and what he's got for you. You've learned from this. And then every one of these situations, there's this new wave of receiving blessing, favor, providential opportunities, whether that's jobs, houses, relationships. I mean, I that right there may be the takeaway of the whole episode of just listen, wherever you're at in the process,
Yeah.
that's where it goes. So good, Amy.
Yeah. You know what? I really appreciate that you brought that out, because I've talked about this many, many times, but I never thought about it exactly that way.
Hmm.
But that really is the way life is, because you're going to continue to have the hurts. I remember at one point thinking, after I survived my divorce, I'm done with hurt now. I've had my, my
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Check it off the list.
Wrong. Like, who knew that there were going to be all these other things that were going to happen? So even that, just knowing that, okay, there will be another one. And as long as you keep taking those steps, you can learn through it, and you can then get to the other side and have good things happen.
Makes me think of Maxwell's Falling. Was it Falling Forward?
Yes.
When I used to do a decent John Maxwell impersonation, but he'd be like, "My name is John, and I'm your friend.
Yes.
And if you fail, hey, while you're down there, pick something up. You might not be there for a while." Whatever. That's a
Yeah,
bad
right.
John Maxwell impersonation, but
No, you're right. You're
I
right.
remember him saying that when you fail and you fall down, pick something up, right? I love John Maxwell, but yeah, it is. I mean, you hope you don't get back there, but you do. But it's an opportunity to learn things that, and like you said, none of these, and I think everybody feels this way, is when we go through, pain or failure, none of us want to order that off the menu of life, right? None of us are like, you know what I'll take? I'll take the death of a friend, or, whatever it is. I'll take downsizing from a job, please. None
Yeah.
of us order it, but I mean, when Jesus says, "Hey, in this life, you're going to have struggles of many kind, but take heart because I've overcome the world." Like, it's going to happen. You're going to have failure. You're going to have hurt. You're going to have pain, but he's with us in it, and he's always there pulling us into something new.
Yeah.
So you jump into the Maxwell coaching, you get downsized. Now you're able to go full in and take us to that. And then let's get, while we still have a little bit of time, take us into getting into that. And then let's talk about the book.
So I've done a lot of things through that. I've been able to do some keynote speaking, which I love. I think part of it because I am a former teacher.
Yeah.
I have that in me. And what I say now is I kind of joke that now my audiences actually like listen attentively and don't fall out of their chairs while I'm talking. Good thing. But one of the other things that I've really loved is I facilitate, I call it like learning discussions with teams of people around these topics of leadership and growth and communication. And what has been so fabulous about that is watching people have their own transformational moments as they're going through things, answering questions that maybe they hadn't ever been asked before. I think a lot of times in teams, organizations could say, "Oh, we'll send you to learn a skill for your job." Great. But they don't look at kind of like the inside part of people, kind of like the health side. And that is something that the vast array of resources I have with the John Maxwell team allows me to do and help people with that. So that has been one of those things that I didn't even realize how much I would love that. But watching a team go from maybe kind of dysfunctional, I've got one team I'm thinking of in particular where they were working together, but not really together. And I've been with them now for a couple of years, and to just watch the transformation in their even how they relate to each other. Like they have gotten to the point now where they have offsite meetings or family gatherings and they have their families come and get together. That would never have happened
Yeah.
2 years ago if we hadn't gone through all the different, discussions and books and things that we have. So that kind of thing just, I don't know, it really fills my cup because it feels like I am helping other people kind of experience that transformation of growth that I have experienced.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I mean, it goes back, right? It's, the hurt, the learning, the receiving. I mean,
Yep.
it happens with every one of the teams too. So good. So get us into the book. You decided, yeah, I guess I'm an author now too. Like how did God bring you into that?
Yeah, so I never planned to write the book. I started growing my email list, and two of my mentors said, "You have to be communicating often." Like, what do you mean? Like once a month? They're like, "Oh, no. Like at least once a week." I'm like, once a week? I can't write once a week. Well, you need to. So I started writing these stories every week. And what happened was I really do feel like the more you start paying attention to things, the more you start seeing them. And it's like everywhere around me, I would see these little things in life that's like, ooh, there's a leadership principle or there's a personal growth principle around that story. So I wrote stories for probably, oh gosh, almost a year. And then I realized someone told me, Seth Godin takes his blogs and puts them into a book.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if Seth Godin can do it, I can do it. So I didn't know how to write a book, but I took all those stories and I put them into this book that really, it's called Seeing Blind Spots, Leadership Lessons from Real Life. And it's short little stories that at the end, I have 2 questions that are about leading a team, and then 2 questions that are more about a personal side related to that story. So it's one of those things that I literally didn't say I'm going to write this book, but it all sort of came together. And again, learning, I had to find out how to do all that. So yeah, it's available on Amazon and it's also on my website at amybarge.com.
amybarge.com. So you've got the book, which I want you guys go out and go check it out. It's on Amazon, easy way to get it. You've also got it's like a checklist that you have for people to help kind of understand their need for personal growth. Talk about that real quick. I want you to make sure that we get that resource to people.
Sure. I call it blind spot glasses because when it comes to growth, whether people have never thought about growing themselves or they read a book once and said, I should do something with that. Or maybe they've invested a lot of money in their personal growth. I know that there's a problem, and that is you still have blind spots around your growth. And we all have them. That's why they're called blind spots.
Yeah.
And so this handout actually walks you through 8 really common spots, gaps that we have when it comes to growing ourselves. And it doesn't just tell you, hey, here are the 8, but then it gives you a little something that you can do to try to help yourself deal with one of those. So one of mine, I'll just be honest, is comparison. And you might not think, well, why would that keep you from growing? Well, if you look at what somebody else is doing and you compare yourself to that and you think, oh, they're better, they're faster, they're farther along, that can be something that will stop you from going ahead to grow. And so I've kind of had to learn the hard way that really isn't going to serve me well. One of the times when I got a new job, well, actually the first job I got right out of teaching, I went to work in an office where everything they did was on a computer. And I didn't know anything about a computer. And so I worked with this young guy who was like almost young enough to be my son. And I would watch him do all these things. I'm thinking, I don't know how to do that. And I remember the day I thought, okay, I have to just swallow my pride, get over myself and go, Brian, could you help me here? And I have vivid memories of sitting with my little yellow legal pad and going, could you just tell me one more time, how do I attach the Word document to the email?
Yeah.
And, I mean, really, it was that bad. But looking back, I realized if I had just spent all my time comparing myself to him going, you're not that good, you'll never be that good, I wouldn't have learned from him the way I did. So that's just one. There's 8 of them. So I love to help people kind of open their eyes, put on their glasses to see which of those might be holding them back in their own growth. So that's on my website.
They can get that just by going to the website?
Yeah. Right on the homepage, you scroll to the bottom, there's a little button. It actually, I think right now it says subscribe. I'm trying to get it changed to blind spot glasses, but I haven't, that's technology. I haven't figured that out yet. But
Okay.
if you hit subscribe, it'll ask you for your email address, and then I will send it right to you.
And that's at amybarg.com.
.com.
BARG. No
RG.
E.
No E. Right.
We will post all those links when we post this this episode on YouTube, and as well we'll post it on the show notes. And so, Amy, I wish we had time for another whole conversation, because I know you've got stories upon stories, and I love it. You've given us some inspiration today. You've given us some really practical takeaways, and I know that's what you're doing with your coaching. That's why you're being asked to speak, and I'm just so stoked about the journey that's brought you to becoming who God's created you to be. And the recap, right? Hurt, learn, receive. That is the golden takeaway right there. So, Amy Barg, you're phenomenal. It's been an inspiration to chat with you. I can't wait till maybe we can meet in person, have a cup of coffee, and see what's coming next for you.
Thank you so much. This has just really been a blessing and a privilege. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy.